When it comes to talking about mental health, I've always found myself much better at being the support rather than the supported. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I frequently found myself being the person that people turn to, and not just people my own age, sometimes people older than me, people who you would never thought would open up to someone as young as I was. And I always put it down to the fact that I was quite tall, so being tall, people might have thought that I was much more approachable, much more supportive. But then I started to socialize with people online as well. And online, I don't think most people know how tall I actually am. So when people started coming to me to vent about things in their lives, big things, little things, I was baffled. I honestly thought it had been because I was quite tall. Now, I've spoken a lot recently about how I'm no longer the guy that people turn to and use and then discard. I have grown tired of dynamics, relationships, friendships where I've got to put all the effort in, but the other person just won't even go part of the way for me. But I will say that on the subject of talking to people about their problems, I will be there for someone knowing full well that they wouldn't do the same for me in return. I can't be any other way. I enjoy helping people. I want to help people. I like knowing that people trust me in that way. So I haven't changed in that regard. And I've even got being the supporter down to an art form. So when someone comes to me, I'm always very clear that I'm not their therapist. And I don't mean that in a nasty, dismissive way. I'm not your therapist. Go bother someone else. I mean it in the sense that I'm literally not a trained professional, and I'll never offer advice unless I know for certain that it's sound advice. And if I don't know the answer to something, I'll always be quite honest. But truthfully, most people just want to vent. They don't want advice. Sometimes they already know the answer and they just want to get something off their chest. For example, if someone's just had a breakup, I will avoid using the phrase, you'll find somebody else soon, because it's probably true and they know it to be true, but right now, that's not what they're thinking about. Right now, they're grieving the relationship that's just ended. So that's my take on being there for people. But when it comes to being open myself, I honestly find it very, very difficult and also quite a bit unhelpful. There's obviously the fact that a lot of people will encourage a guy like me to open up, but when we do, we're immediately told that they're not our therapist, that we're whining, will be falsely compared to someone else. Oh, this other guy over here, this 18-year-old is going through the same thing and he's not complaining about it. Why is a guy of your age complaining about it? People can be quite nasty. And unpopular opinion, I think that a lot of the discourse that happens around International Men's Day, encouraging men to talk more about their mental health, is pure and simple virtue signaling. And I actually, one year, I was on Twitter and I just found myself deactivating my account for a day because I was so tired of seeing this hogwash from mostly women who I know for a fact any other day would be posting about ha ha broke men, ha ha depressed men, ha ha lonely men. But today they're expecting men to just randomly open up as if it's that simple. To be honest, I kind of switch off when I see those kinds of posts, or I see posters about how men are worth saving, because I know deep down they're not talking about me. They're not talking about guys like me. They're talking about the high earners, the attractive guys, the military guys, the educated guys. I just don't think people are talking about me when I see these things. In fact, a lot of what I see from some of these armchair activist types leads me to believe that they might actually be pro male suicide. But those are just the nasty people. But there's also some, I guess, very well meaning people who will say to me, if you ever want to talk, come and talk to me. But the truth is, I just believe this to be them just being nice. It's something you say to people, it's something you say to be polite. I don't really believe they'll be there if I wanted to chat. I don't expect them to. I don't see why they would, to be quite honest. And to be quite honest, if someone was to present themselves to me and say, listen, I'm coming over to you, let's have a day out together, and I'll be your support, we'll probably spend that whole day laughing, joking, and talking about all manner of things except the mental health thing. I find it much easier just to deal with it on my own and, have your friends around for the good times. Plus, I want people to see me when I'm at my best. I long ago became conscious of the fact that I've never actually been a part of someone's life when they were at their best. I was always the guy they turned to when no one else would have them, or before they achieved some sort of greatness. I've never actually been part of someone's life when they're at their best. But I'm not a hypocrite, and I don't want people feeling that way about me. I want people to see me happy. I want people to see me smiling. It always baffles me in a nice way when people I know in person describe me as quite happy, quite smiley, quite jolly, because sometimes I genuinely don't feel that way. And it's nice for me to know that the smiley personality is how I convey myself. I like that about myself. But there have been times where I have tried to talk about my mental health to people and been shot down. And a few years ago, even tried to do like a little video diary of my mental health on Twitter, like a thread. Um, my explanation for it was that I wanted to help other people. I wanted other people to see what it's like, and maybe they might be able to identify some issues within themselves that they can then seek help for. But I became a little bit too honest in that diary, and I realized that I was making it all about myself, and I was embarrassing myself. So I took it all down, and I've been very quiet on the mental health discussion front for quite some time now. But I wanted to make a video today that is with the sole purpose of offering a perspective to anybody who might come across it. Now, every video I post, even the stuff where I'm rambling about mindless stuff like Twitter drama or some kind of thing I've noticed about the world, there's always a small part of me that hopes that someone may see that and feel validated, like they're not the only person to have noticed that thing, or they might feel a little bit better about themselves. Maybe even get a few laughs out of it. But generally, I post those videos for myself. This YouTube account is very much my video version of Twitter, Facebook, that kind of thing. But this video I'm recording now is primarily for people who might be going through a particular event in their mental health journey, if you will. Now, it's not going to be for people who are considering suicide, because obviously I don't want anyone to take their own life, but there's not really much I can say to people like that. And why would someone currently going through that stage of their life be watching my silly little YouTube channel? Instead, I'm going to be addressing a group of people that are often overlooked, and that is the people who have attempted suicide recently but survived and are currently going through a very, very dark time, because a lot of people make this assumption that once a suicide attempt has failed, everything sort of gets back to normal. I mean, I like to think that all of us, if we saw someone on a bridge ready to jump off, we would do something to stop them. We'd try and talk to them, or we'd try and get someone to talk to them. I like to imagine that's what would happen to most of us. I like to think that people are inherently still very good, even in the world we live in now. But the truth is, once we've done that, we would probably go back to our lives and not really question where that person is now, where that person ended up. So it's a very often overlooked group of people, the post-suicide. Gosh, I nearly said squad there. But I'm going to talk about my own suicide attempts and hope that my perspective gives people guidance within theirs. Remember that I'm not a professional mental health person. So this is going back 20 years now, and for a long time I'd been, things have been building up. I won't go into too much detail, but I remember one Wednesday I put my school uniform on, and my mum went out to work. My sister went out, and I was on my own. And I just decided not to go in. I'd never bunked off before, but on this day, I just decided I'm going to have a day off. No one's going to be home until I would have been home anyway, so no one's going to know. So I took my clothes off, put my pajamas on, and just had a day watching TV, I guess, probably. Or I probably listened to CDs. But anyway, I had that day. And then the following day, which was Thursday, the 13th of May, 2004, 20 years ago today, I did the same thing again. And then randomly, I just decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the job. I'm going to do what would bring everyone in my life peace, give them closure, give them, clear the way for them. Because I honestly felt that my existence was a problem for everybody, even to people who hadn't made me feel that way. So I took a bunch of pills. It was a mixture of charcoal tablets and iron tablets. And I spent the day waking up, going back into unconsciousness, struggling to breathe, being sick. I remember at one point pulling myself down on the laminate floor just to get some cold on my face. And then I slipped into unconsciousness, and at some point later in the day, I woke up and I felt absolutely awful. But I went and had some toast and I carried on with my day. The following day, I think I took another day off, but then I started to go back to school. But I had issues at school, so I wasn't there for much longer. But the suicide attempt was just something that completely slotted into my subconsciousness. Not in the sense that I blacked it out. I remembered it, but I just sort of got on with my life. And I even convinced myself that, you know, I I was up and walking by the end of the day. No one knew what I'd done. They wouldn't find out for months. So it's very possible that the pills I used were not that dangerous. It probably was. I probably wasn't close to death. And it was quite possibly just a cry for attention. Or maybe I'd seen some TV show where this happened and I was trying to emulate a character that I liked or something like that. So I just got on with things. But then 5 years later, when I was about 19, I began to think about it more, around about the fifth anniversary. And I remember when I was on that cold floor trying to get as much cold onto my face as possible, I didn't care. I wasn't worried about being sick. I wasn't worried about anything. I just wanted it to be over, and not because it was a disgusting feeling and I wanted release. I was looking forward to not being around anymore. And from that, I was able to conclude, unfortunately, that I had attempted to kill myself. It was an attempt. It was the equivalent of pulling a gun on someone and pulling the trigger. Only I did that to myself with pills. And even if the combination of pills wouldn't have harmed me at all, and it just made me a little bit sick, the fact is, up there in my head, they were going to end me, and I took them. And it really bothered me. It really haunted me. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I still have issues with mental health. And there are still moments in this day and age where I do feel as though maybe the world would be a better place without me in it. And sometimes I do even find myself preparing. Like back in 2020, I remembered actually going to the trouble of recording a video for YouTube that would have been unlisted, that I could post to Twitter, because not only do I have a lot of people on there that I used to talk to quite frequently, but I also have a few people on there who knew me in person and could have passed it on to the people in my life, in my real life. And it was basically a little video message that I would have left if I decided to take the option to leave this planet. Um, just basically explaining to all my IRL friends and the few people that I've met on the internet that I've never had the pleasure of meeting that, this is all on me. They've done nothing wrong. They've done nothing to incite this. This is a choice that I'm making, and thanking them for their time, thanking them for the memories. And I found myself, preparing for this video to post, as well as write some handwritten letters for the people in my more immediate life. Um, and to be completely honest with you, the only thing that stopped me from going through with it was I didn't have the guts to. I didn't have the energy to. But the desire to do it again sometimes is there. Right now I'm not in the place I want to be. I'm definitely further along from where I was. But these days, I don't really have anyone that I can turn to about this kind of thing. I don't really have any friends. The people I know in real life are people who let me hang out with them when someone else cancels on them, or when they're bored of other people or other people are bored of them. And people on the internet, like I've said before on this channel alone many times, it's difficult to have a conversation with them. It's difficult to type out or record a very detailed message, because I just know that if they get called away, that message is never going to be responded to, and I'm just going to feel like an idiot. And even if I can get someone to actually have a conversation with me, it's texting. Texting has no emotion to it whatsoever. And even if I can get people to video call, it's going to be because they've got a spare few minutes. They're not really making time for me. So I don't feel as though I have people who would really miss me if I was gone. In fact, over the past few years, I have been removing people from my life. People who I don't think are adding anything to my life, or for whom I don't feel I'm adding anything to their life. In both my online life and my offline life, and sometimes it'll be months before they've even realised I've gone. So I know that I don't really have much of an impact, and some days it can be quite overwhelmingly depressing to know that nothing you did that day mattered, and feeling as though nothing you can do will ever change that. I do feel as though I'm the sort of person that if one of my friends had a kidney issue and I needed to be their donor, I'd probably would give them my kidney. But if someone was to ask them a week later, who are 100 influential people in your life, I probably wouldn't even make that list. But someone who got them a get well soon card probably would. And I wouldn't be allowed to say anything, because if I did, then I'd be one of those guys that does nice things, but only for the expectation of praise and reward. So I do feel very isolated and almost imprisoned in my own mind at times. So I'm not going to say there's a happy ending. I'm not going to be unrealistic about this. It's a long journey. If you are someone that's just had a suicide attempt that failed, I'm glad it failed, but you do have a lot of difficult times ahead. But I will also say that you'll have some joy as well. So the one thing I'm glad of is that I didn't die in 2004. Sure, it would have been handy to avoid COVID and the further decline of our civilization, but I did also get to fall in love and hold my nephew and even, play with my dogs. And 2 years after that attempt, we moved to West Sussex. And I'm honestly glad we did that, even though I had a lot of reservations at the time. And it does make me shudder to think that it all could have ended for me 20 years ago. That's longer than I would have been alive if I'd have died then. In a small bedroom in London with lime green walls. Yeah, God, I remember those walls. There's a reason why whenever I think of that bedroom, I always try and think of it with the nice light blue wallpaper and the grey, calming carpet. Even though that was only the look it had for the last 6 or 7 months that we were there, because those lime green walls were terrible. I get a headache thinking of them now. But I'm so glad that things didn't end for me back then, that I was able to move on. And, even when times get difficult and I feel as though I'm on my own, I do persevere and I do try and take things day by day. So if you are someone who's just survived an attempt, there are days worth staying awake for, and there are reasons to get up in the morning. It won't be perfect, but you'll be glad you failed.